Hi, everyone. All right, we're here today on 1-800 Leadership, which talks about very timely topics. And one of the top, excuse me, someone's telling me I'm supposed to be on a live stream. Um, one of the really important topics that we're dealing with right now is the tremendous demand of training in corporations, with the changes that are going on, with being able to handle overwhelm and stress, with being able to integrate diversity, inclusion, and belonging, being able to deal with the chaos, being able to deal with the remoteness and the change of work life. There is so much going on. And if you've had any background, like Lara has had her entire career, around training and leadership, you know that we already came into this pre-pandemic time period where there was so much data around how much management and leadership needed training in order to really empower their people and care for their people. So I would say in a lot of ways, we're already somewhat at a demand. And then now it is just off the charts. And I thought this was a really opportune time to grab a really perfect person, because the power of training for me right now in organizations, as you're listening, or leaders as you're listening, to think of what kind of training you're going to do, is to not just jump into any training or to get one recommendation or remember one person you worked with 2 businesses ago or 3 companies ago, but for you to really, really think, what is the kind of training and education that would not only transform myself as a leader, my teams, really give us this very, very inclusive and wholeness to our environment, coming out of this very zero-sum game architecture and this, hierarchical architecture. But what kind of training is going to take us into the next 10, next 20 years that is just really going to bring human beings together? It's going to allow them to care, self-care for themselves, be committed to self-development, understand that we as human beings, when we're put in proximity, have reactions to one another, and those reactions come from a particular place. And that if you understand context, if you understand those nuances, you can become so much more malleable in these relationships, especially relationships that are put together to be challenged around a common goal that is challenging. So Laura's here today, and I thought she's so perfect because she's the co-founder and lead facilitator and senior executive coach and culture change partner in learning as leadership. It's a decades-old leadership development and culture change firm in the San Francisco Bay Area. But what I found also perfect about Lara, and why I invited her to have this live stream together, was because it's a legacy model. This was something that her mother founded and birthed, and Lara has picked it up in her mother's passing and is carrying on that legacy of contribution. And it's also International Women's Month. And so I thought it was just all together. It was just a rich, wonderful way that we can have this dialogue and not only find out about your mother, but find out about you, but also really understand how important the approach and the kind of education and training that you get. So welcome with all of that. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow. That is a warm welcome. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell me, first, I'd love to hear just your thoughts about what's going on in the world and what's going on with business around training and the demand and the need for education.
Yeah. It's interesting because we've been around doing this work for more than 30 years. And I used to think of our work as really on the fringe. And I think of my mother as a pioneer. And I love the fact that today, in fact, it's something in demand rather than something you have to convince people is a good idea to do. And that shift in the perspective that leaders have, that coaching is helpful, that working on yourself is helpful, that it's not just about what are the results you're going to deliver, but if you work on yourself and if you improve how you show up, if you are able to access the ability to show up as your best self at any point, and especially in stressful situations, everybody's going to be better for it. Employers are going to have higher retention. Their employees are going to be more effective. And I think there's this realization that because we spend the majority of our waking life hours at work, and with the pandemic, all that got even more blurred, there's an understanding that if we don't take care of ourselves as human beings, we're not going to be as creative and innovative and productive in our organizations. And so that's just been really heartwarming. So
Yeah.
frankly, I love the fact that there's, as one says in business terms, a lot more competition out there because it's needed. It's needed.
It is, right? And I think that, just like you said, I love that you highlighted that there was a point in time where, let's say, caring was something that was like, oh, come on, we don't have time to care. Look at all these demands. That's not going to mean anything. But what we have come out of this pandemic seeing by disrupting human beings and pulling away all of their, shiny objects and putting them all together with their family and their work, and then taking away their ability to blow off steam in all these other ways, people had to really just be with themselves and be with their work and be with what didn't work and be with what was missing and say to themselves, what am I doing this for? What is my life about? Am I happy? Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how exhausted I am. I'm really exhausted. Because these things only happen if you're being present and you really check into your body, to give yourself the space and time to kind of examine how people communicate with you, how it makes you feel, all of that, where feelings were not something to bring to the workplace. But now feelings are something so important that we checked in. We spent 2 years fundamentally with our feelings, being forced to feel all of our feelings. And we can't change that. We can't go back. There is no new normal. There is exactly what you said, which is, oh, we get it. We do have to care for people, for this company, for this business, for our endeavor to be sustainable, let alone scalable, sustainable. We have to integrate self-care. We have to integrate self-development. We have to bring caring to performance. And I think what is so great, and I'd love to jump into how your work works, because a lot of things that I say to people, when you think of caring being this thing, like we said, on the outside, and now that it's in the forefront, caring is not something you do. It's a place you come from. It's a place you think from. It's something you envelop yourself in. It's a filter that you put over and look through the world, re-examine your relationships through the filter of caring and say, oh, that was missing. Oh, I didn't know. And I think it kind of brings us back to very, very simple fundamentals that our parents used to say, which is, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, right? And that really kind of gives us that language of like, you can demand things of people, you can challenge people. But if you're challenging them without any caring, what you're doing is you're burning people out. You're mitigating their self-expression or completely suppressing it. And you're part of the construct of that, not only to them, but as leaders to ourselves. Totally. So, right. So I'd love to hear how does your work work? Where do you start to approach working with someone? How do you integrate the philosophy? What does it start to mobilize for teams and leaders?
Yeah, I'll jump in and, interrupt me because I can get passionate on a tangent and like, so
perfect.
Yeah. So there's this idea for us of becoming super self-aware and super self-aware of how we show up when we're our best self, but also how we show up when we're triggered. Yeah. And there's like these two sides of us. When I'm with my natural strengths and my best self, I'm innovative, I'm creative, I'm naturally caring, as you were talking about. I'm naturally adaptive. I'm able to respond to stress rather than react. But if some aspect in my ego, and I'll define that in a second, or what I call my ego system is triggered, then I have these automatic counterproductive behaviors that get triggered in me. And now I'm reacting rather than responding. And so what we love to do is first help people understand what does it look like when I'm my natural best self? But then what does it look like when I'm my triggered self? And I'm almost never my triggered self on purpose. So for example, my triggered self looks like I kind of shut down. I avoid conflict. I don't put my voice in the room. There's a lot going on up here, but I'm holding back. And so now, so my triggered self is not the argumentative, loud one. It's more the shut down, conflict avoidant one.
Mm.
And when I am like that, well, I may be there's a lookalike of strength. There's a lookalike of I'm kind and I'm, I'm not the loudest voice in the room, but actually I'm triggered. There's probably something you said in the meeting that I heard as a criticism.
Right.
And instead of engaging generatively, I am shutting down. So I want to, if I'm a participant in one of our programs, I want to learn what that looks like when I'm shut down, because in truth, it's so automatic that I don't necessarily even realize that's what I'm doing. Or if I realize I'm shutting down, I have a lot of justifications for that. Well, I don't want to just put my foot in my mouth and just say something that's going to be disruptive, and I'm too, worked up right now to say anything constructive. So I have all these justifications. If I'm even aware that's what I'm doing, half the time
Right.
I'm not even aware that's what I'm doing. It's just so automatic because I'm in a fight or flight mode. So
Right.
I'm in that brain stem and I don't even realize what I'm doing. So if already I can learn to know that about myself, that when I'm triggered, when I'm in reaction to something, I shut down, I disengage. You might do something different, but that's what I do. By the way, I numb. That's the hardest type of reaction to catch, because since I
Yes.
numb, I don't even know that, like I'm
That
numbing,
you're
that I'm
numbing.
numbing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So knowing that about myself, and the way we get at that understanding is through a very particular type of 360 feedback exercise, where we go out and interview for an hour by phone. When I say we go out, we go out on the phone.
Right.
We're on Zoom, right?
Right.
An interview for an hour. So let's say I'm the participant. Learning as leadership would be interviewing 10 to 14 people in my environment for an hour each, and asking them, what does it look like when Lara shows up as her best self? What are her natural strengths? What do you appreciate about her? What would you wish she would do even more of? And then how does she show up when she's not her best self? What happens when she's triggered, when she's reacting? What are those counterproductive behaviors that you'd wish she were more aware of and would work on?
Right.
And so we go out and ask these questions, and then somebody would then coach me through the findings of that 360 in a very careful way. It takes us about 10 hours in 1 to 2 hour increments just to walk you through your feedback, because it's a very tender place, hearing feedback.
Right.
And the last thing we want is for you to shut down when you hear the feedback, or just hit yourself over the head with it, like, okay, now I'm a terrible person and I just want to crawl under the blanket.
Right.
So it's a very careful process, and that's kind of the diagnostic phase. But then once I understand, oh, right, I tend to avoid conflict. Oh, right, I tend to not speak up when I'm a little triggered or worried. Then I want to understand what triggers those behaviors in me. Because for us, if you just work at the level of the symptom, if you just coach me to say, okay, here are the 5 ways to give direct feedback. Here's how to speak up in a meeting. So you can tell me all of that, and I'm still going to be in the heat of the moment. Okay, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I can't right now because I'm in my brainstem. I can't. So I need to know what is getting in the way of me doing what I know I should do. What is getting in the way of that?
Yes.
And that's where there's this whole introspective approach to understanding, what have I staked my self-worth in growing up? And once I did that, those became like points of sensitivity, points of insecurity. And when I perceive unconsciously that's in danger, I have a reaction. So to come back to my example with this conflict avoidance, holding my voice back from the conversation. When I started doing this work on myself with this approach, I got to remember that I was born in Paris, France. And then my family moved to Montreal, Canada, when I was a little child. And so my first years in elementary school, they were fraught with feeling different, not really speaking the language. It was an English immersion school, and I only spoke French. We moved into a neighborhood that was a Scandinavian immigrant neighborhood. So everybody had blonde, straight hair with blue eyes. And as you can tell, that's not what I look like, right? And so at that tender age where we're sensitive to how we are perceived in our environment, I just experienced feeling rejected and not part of the cool cliques. And so what I learned by doing this work on myself is that really what I staked my self-worth in, which usually is our pain point, my pain point was that I didn't feel liked for who I was. I didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel wanted. So my insecurities became the fear of being rejected, the fear of not being liked, the fear of not being accepted. And that's what I had staked my self-worth in. So when we're in a meeting and somebody has a strong opinion about something, and my opinion happens to be different, if I say it out loud, I am risking that you will not like me for it. That's a no-no. I've staked my self-worth in that.
Right.
I can't go there. But of course, it's unconscious. It's not that I wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to make sure everybody likes me today and that nobody rejects me. It's not something that's conscious, but it's a driver. It's an unconscious driver. And we call that our ego drivers. It's to preserve my own sense of self-worth in my own eyes. My ego wants to be reassured always that I'm liked, accepted, wanted.
I love what you're saying. There's two layers to, I think, that is so great for people to really consider around this and in training, which is the whole aspect of shutting down and feeling so isolated in that this is happening to me. I wish I didn't have this issue where I get these triggers or I react this way, or this shuts me down and I don't have my full power, my full self-expression. But this is what I feel so beautiful about the whole dialogue of belonging, which is every single human, no matter where you are in the world, no matter if you're born into a wealthy family or an impoverished family, you're educated, not educated, whatever, we all have a core fundamental incident, and that is we don't belong here, or we're not the right way, or there's something wrong with us. And we just always think like, well, not that person, because look how amazing they are. Not that one, because that person's so gorgeous, or that. No, everybody. Everybody has something that makes them feel disconnected. And it's so powerful to be able to do the work and have the work, not just as yourself, as someone in the company, but for everybody to do that kind of self-reflective work. The outside layer that I think is so powerful is that when you have that, like what you call that shutdown experience, like for myself, I am by nature an intense, passionate person. It's in my natural self-expression. And when I do my shutdown, what happens is I occur for people intense and aloof. So then they make up something in their own trigger about my trigger, like she's unapproachable, she's mean, she thinks she's better than everybody else. But here I am in my own lizard brain that where I felt my feelings got hurt, and I felt like, here's the Audrey, that same thing, doesn't look like anybody else, has this hair, is not as attractive, or nobody wants to be, or I'm too mixed, I can't fit in any one group in school, and I have all my own same things. And I think that's so powerful because here we are going through something very reactive and very emotionally, what could be invasive, but it's like a hiding of oneself. I have to hide this part of myself and you can't see it. But guess what? You're sitting right there and I can see it. I can see it on your face. I can feel it in who you're being, and it's in the room, right? Yeah. And so you typically ask that person, like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You don't seem fine to me. Yeah, no, I'm fine. Try this. Okay, well, something's going on with Audrey, clearly, right? And that's where, if Audrey does, or whoever the person is, has the tools to be able to unpack that, to be able to dialogue and say, hey, guess what, everybody? In that meeting, when I was just kind of not myself, here's what happened.
Yes.
So, and then people could, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And now I feel closer to you. I
Yes.
feel a sense of trust with you. I feel an affinity with you. You're a human being just like me. And wow, I didn't know. Look at us. We're so different. I didn't know you had some of the same things going on. And it's, spoiler alert, we all have that going on. So, but tell me about your mom. I want to make sure that I just hear about your mother, because as a mother myself, and
Yeah.
I'm just so moved that you could have done anything. I mean, you could have built your own training and what, but that you said this is important. My mother is a pioneer. What she's done makes a difference for people, and I'm going to now make my life about that. I just
Mm.
heartstrings are just everywhere. Tell me about your mom.
Yeah. It's so when I was 14, and my mom was 49, and she was diagnosed with a terminal cancer that year, and she was given a few months to live, and it was a very rare type of cancer. It was a melanoma in the eye. There were only 200 cases reported in the world. And so she couldn't have access to all the typical medical treatments because of the location of the tumor. She couldn't do radiation. She couldn't do chemo. And so that launched her and my dad on a whole sort of introspective journey, because they thought, well, if we only have a few months left, how can we make the most of them? And so they just devoured books and went on trips, both looking for a treatment, but also looking for, in a way, the meaning of life. Like, how do you make the most out of a few months? They actually came to California. So we were all in France at that point, came to California because of one of the specialists for her condition, and bumped into the whole human potential movement here. And again, different pioneers and books. And so they both came back, not with a treatment per se, but with ideas like, oh, I can be quick to anger. Maybe that's something I want to work on if I only have a few
Mhm.
months left with my
Mm.
teenage daughter and my young son. And for my dad, oh, I can shut down and just disappear. And so they started to just work on themselves. And as part of that, it was for my mom a time of revisiting the formative years of her life. And she had completely shut down, if you will, or put under wraps a very traumatic childhood, because she was born in 1933, Jewish, in Paris. And
Oh,
so
wow.
she was sent into hiding outside of Paris with a different family, a wonderful Catholic family, at the age of 7. And her father was deported to Auschwitz, never came back. And so she came out of the war with just having experienced so much, but then as a survival mechanism, just putting it all under wraps.
Mhm.
But there was something, though, out of those years where she became an activist. For her, there was this idea of, I need to make a difference in the world so that this kind of atrocity never happens again. And so she did all sorts of quote unquote crazy things for that. She was, for example, one of the things she did after the war is she went and worked for a company that happened to not hire women. Not very surprising at that time, but
Mm.
it was specifically true then, and was anti-Semitic. So she hid that she was Jewish,
Oh my goodness.
and and then she worked double, triple time. And she even asked her mom to come help her in the evening. So there was this trial period. And at the end of the trial period, her boss told her, "You're amazing. You're hired." So then she tells him, "Well, we just have a little problem. I didn't tell you, but I'm Jewish."
Mm.
And so then her boss tells her, "Oh, well, you're the exception that confirms the rule." And she stands up, she slaps him in the face, and she
What?
walks out.
What?
So that was my
Oh
mom.
my goodness.
She
I
was a little
love
bit
your
of a
mother.
she so she fought for gay rights. She went on a hunger strike for that. I mean, so until this time of having to go inward when she was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, She was battling the demons outside of her. She was the righteous activist. And then when she started to do this work on herself, she realized that this time the enemy wasn't outside, it was inside. There was nobody left to fight outside. She now had to deal with herself. And she came to a realization that she really had seen life like there's the camp of the good people and the bad people, the right and the wrong. And she was always on the right. She was the victim, never the victimizer. She was fighting for the victims. And she came to realize that actually her behavior of anger, for example, that was a way in which she was like a mini oppressor. She was quick to anger. She needed to be right. She needed to win arguments. And so as she was doing this work on herself, one time she was on a beach in the north of France with my dad, and they were having a conversation about some topic, and they were disagreeing. And the more they disagreed, the more it was driving her crazy. Like, how could he think that stupid way? Doesn't he see that this is how life works? And then she caught herself getting so upset that she felt like strangling him. And she was like, whoa. And in her introspective work, she realized, you know what? I don't know, if I had been born in Germany rather than France, not Jewish, just a little younger, maybe I would have been a Nazi.
Wow.
And, that realization was key to her. Like, that was part of what she wanted to give back to others, was don't wait until you're at a time in your life where it's a crisis, where it's a divorce, where, you don't get the promotion you wanted, where whatever it may be, a health crisis. Don't wait for that to work on yourself. And to realize all the ways in which, however you might have been victimized in your past, you can be the victimized too in the present, because it's only once you own that part of yourself that you can change the victim-victimizer cycle in the world. And I think for her, the two are connected. The more I work on myself, the more the world can be a better place, but in a way that was just very real given her experience. And that really inspired me to continue her work, because I did see her as a teenager work on her anger. When we're teenagers, we really know our parents' weaknesses. We're very aware of them. And so I got to see her work on that. And I don't know, it was just so inspiring to see that from, as soon as I graduated from business school, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to get back to. So
I love that. And you get another hit at how ahead of her time she was in terms of what she was building, because I think so much of what you just expressed about, I've been fighting everybody else, but the fight within myself, I haven't actually contended with that one. And being able to look outside of the world and say, wow, I could see myself being that way, a way that I despise. I could see myself possibly being this way, a way, had I been in different circumstances, been born at a different time, been born a different gender, all of those things. When we start to really examine that, I think what is beyond just the leadership and the personal and the self-development, working with teams, I think what's so powerful about what you just shared about your mother is so much of what we're seeing now, where people hold up successful people and revere them, and then become so shocked when you find out something in their personal life. But it's like, but of course, we all have something that we're terribly ashamed of, that we're terribly frightened somebody will find out if we haven't done the work. If we haven't done the work to be able to dissipate and diffuse that intensity to it and start to unravel it and go through it until it's malleable and we can slow it down and we can see those triggers happening in slow motion, to be able to disrupt it, to be able to care for it, to nurture what was missing about not being nurtured. I think this is the thing that I see most about leaders being toppled and taken down, in our time right now, is where are we going to start also building this foundation also internally in companies to be able to say, okay, our CEO made the mistake, or that leader said something really not, are we just going to oust everybody, or are we going to say, this is a huge insight into the work that we need to do in this company. The fact that you have not had the space to transform that. And if you want to, because if there's people that are like, no, I don't want to, this is the way I want to be, like, then you're not going to be a fit here, obviously. But if somebody's like, yes, I know this is a problem with myself, I don't know how to be any other way. And if a company is like, great, let's have that all be here in the work. Or if people are able to do that work, to be able to like have a head up on the breakdown of it not happening later, because we've done the work now. Thank gosh we did the work over the last year or two, because that could have really showed up as a huge problem down the line. And look how much we invested. And it's not just that companies invest monetarily in themselves as employees, as team members. Your livelihood is invested in that company. You need it not to fall apart or have some kind of public issue. So your mother is a rock star. And then you are the next generation of rock star by getting that. I just so appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate you spending time with us and sharing about it. And thank you, Lara. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to give voice to,
Yes.
somebody who passed away a long time ago, but I think was ahead of her time. So it's an
agree.
honor. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you. All right, Lara, we have up there and been showing where people can reach out to you. But if you're anything else that you wanted to share about how people can reach out to you, and anything that you maybe wanted to share that's coming up.
Well, oh gosh, we have programs all the time. They can also read our book called Ego-Free Leadership. And I'm personally very available. I love to connect with people and support them. So they'll find how to contact us on the website, and I'd be happy to dialogue with anybody. So yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who's listening today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.